I'm going to do the intro and then we'll get going. So hopefully I can do this in one take. Sometimes it takes me like two takes.
Yeah, well, I understand. I understand.
Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, to another episode of PLP Talks. And if you're not familiar with this series, it's where we have interesting conversations with interesting bikey people that we know. We've had some amazing guests so far. Last week we spoke with Benedict, aka Ultra Romance. We just interviewed Whitney Ford Terry, who's a well-known bikepacker and combines bikepacking with art. We've also had her friend Martina from Swift Industries. So lots of really cool people have joined us on this series so far. And today we've got another awesome guest that we've met in person a couple times. I think the first time in Frostbike in like 2015, and the second time he actually crashed in our living room when he was going to do the Oregon Outback. So today let's welcome Bobby Wintle, who has a bike shop, District Bicycles, but is also the founder, operator of Landrun 100. So thank you, Bobby, for joining us on the show.
Absolutely, Russ. Thank you and Laura both, man. Yeah, like you said, we got to meet a while back, and we've just kind of stayed connected, and it's been really cool to watch you guys grow and be a part of that. So, dude, thank you for having me on. It's great.
Yeah, I'm totally stoked. I think when we first met, you were telling me about the event Landrun 100, and at that time, I wasn't too keyed into the Midwestern gravel events. Can you talk about when it started and why you started it?
Absolutely. So, we had the shop for about a year, just a year at that time, and at the end of 2012. And we knew before we moved to Oklahoma from Kansas, from Emporia, Kansas, where Dirty Kansas 200 is at, and we'd been involved with Dirty Kansas from about 2008 and on as either a support crew or a volunteer or just cheering people on at the finish line. And while I was working at the bike shop at High Gear there, so we had gotten a front row, like front and center view into what was happening with gravel and absolutely with gravel in the Midwest particularly, and how it was just growing from this one particular area, and not a lot of events had been created yet. Mm-hmm. And so when we were moving to open the shop, which we had been writing our business plan for at least 3 years, we knew we wanted to put on an event, and it just kept coming back to me that since we were moving to Oklahoma, that had already been decided, that I knew there were tons of people coming from Dallas and Houston and Austin, Texas for DK that had nothing to train for DK in early spring. And so even though it's rolling the dice with weather and all that, which we can talk about that as we go, I thought, if you're ready for 100 miles of dirt roads in early March or mid-March, then you're well on your way to be ready for 200 miles of gravel, or even just 100 DK, which is also really difficult because it's different, it's hotter, it's just different, more exposed than a lot of places. Mm-hmm. But if you were ready for those things that early in the season, then you had a great chance of finishing 200 miles, because a double century in one day in less than 21 hours, which is their cutoff time, is just at that time was a really crazy notion.
Right.
So that was really the beginning reason to put on a gravel event, and of course it's taken on a full life of its own from this.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what the timeline was when you got a sense that gravel in the Midwest was becoming a thing?
I think we knew at 2008.
Oh, right.
We saw, honestly, I know that sounds like, that's been almost 10 years ago, right? And a lot of people are just getting into it, and a lot of events are still just being created in the Northeast and in the Pacific Northwest, and in California and different places like that, with new things like Grinduro. But I think in 2008 we realized that this was a type of riding that could open up the possibility for great adventure in a single day event, or even a multi-day event, which we're seeing a lot of now, for everyone, not just the fast rider, not just the racer, or not just the person that rides every 2 days and trains and does all sorts of different things. But we saw that this was kind of a type of riding that broke down barriers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just from seeing people that we never thought could finish 200 miles of gravel in 2009 and 2010, our friends that were taking it up just that, within a year, and then finishing the Dirty Kansas, we thought this is the thing. And wherever there are dirt roads, there are courses that can be made, and there are events that can be produced for the people, for everyone. And so that's where we knew that no matter where we went, if dirt roads were in the area, that we should go and seek them out and see if we could come up with a course that was worthy of inviting our friends to, or worthy of inviting people, at large on the internet and opening up as an actual event. So when we got to Oklahoma, it took us a while, actually. It took us a few months after we got to town before we even had time to get out of the shop and go for a ride. But man, once we finally did, and we realized just the endless hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 miles in our area. Honestly, you could put together a network of these roads that in a lot of places would be considered a B road. I think I've said this every time we've talked about our area and our roads. And so once I realized just the high quality of disgustingness that are our roads, and just how much fun they are to ride, and almost more mountain bike-esque like a B road would be in per se Iowa, or even in Kansas or Texas for that matter, I thought we have to invite people to do something. And that was where the original idea really came from.
Mm-hmm. What do you think it is about a gravel event that seems so inviting as opposed to just like a pure like road event?
I think there's a lot more. I really think it has to do originally with it being non-sanctioned, honestly. Mm-hmm. And this may be where we go with this conversation. We don't have to, because it does get really political, and I'm really not a political person. I don't know all the ins and outs of road racing, or even UCI and USAC sanctioned mountain bike racing or cyclocross. I'm really not in tune with that whatsoever. So I think being able to kind of know and see who the promoter is, or where the area is coming from, or that it's connected to this group, or maybe a bike shop here, I think that really breaks down a lot of barriers for people, instead of it being, a series race, or, some sort of team event, or, like a crit is just really intimidating to a lot of people that don't know if they're a good enough bike handler to be, mm-hmm. In a group of people. And then once you take away all the things that have been added into that type of racing, you're left with just, can I do this event? Can I finish this course that's been created? And can I do it in the allotted amount of time, or even if there is a cutoff finish time or whatever? I think that gravel has been able to successfully, for over these last 13 years, which Trans Iowa is kind of the our benchmark for like Midwest gravel. This is where it was born from, and DK would even admit that as well, that they were one of the Trans Iowa was their first real inspiration to do their event. And so I would say Trans Iowa, then DK, and then were the two that really inspired us. But I think it just takes away a level of intimidation that says, well, this is actually just about me and my bike and these country roads, and I'm not necessarily out here to beat anyone else except for the course itself, and to see if I'm worthy and made of it. So I really think that's where gravel is way more inviting than say, worried about the podium or the money or the series event, mm-hmm. where USAC type stuff or UCI mm-hmm. events really focus on that. And that's not what gravel is about, in my opinion.
Right. How do you see gravel events changing now that it's been like over a decade that they've been happening? Like, how have they matured, metamorphosized, branched out?
Absolutely. So, I think we're seeing, more so with, Rebecca's Private Idaho and Grinduro both being stage style races that are mixing up, just instead of just having a course and just having a one-day event. Like we're seeing some multi-stage day races where, your times are accumulated from certain days, which is, really similar to something like, I think it's in Pennsylvania, there's the 3-day mountain bike race. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of it, but the Transylvania Epic or something like that. Anyway, yeah. There's some things like that have already been happening in the mountain bike world. Of course, tons of road races are multi-day in the pro level side of things. So it's making it more worthwhile for people to come and spend the money to stay and pay for the registration fees and be a part of it, because they're getting multiple days to ride their bike. And I think that's super cool. I'm actually really, really intrigued by what the future of gravel looks like with multi-day events, because I'm so in love with bikepacking too. And I really think that's something else that we should talk about, is that I really see bikepacking in non-competitive events or, adventures per se, or just trips that are being put together. That I really see that almost as a succession to these one-day gravel epic races, which I'd love to put our race in there, or the Barry Roubaix up in Michigan, or the Crusher and the Tusher in Utah, Dirty Kansas, Trans Iowa. So instead of just a one-day event, well, Trans Iowa isn't a one-day event. I see multi-day, longer, and then maybe some less competitive-centric things becoming more popular as we get more saturated with the one-day things. Because I think, too, over the last 10 years, I mean, obviously we've seen only a handful of events, 4, 5, 6, and now in the Midwest, particularly, if you look at ridinggravel.com, there's something every single weekend, if not multiple events every weekend somewhere in the country. Yeah, and it's unbelievable. It's hard to pick and choose. So I think sheer numbers of people being interested in gravel and in the events themselves, it has caused a lot of change too. That the demand has become much bigger, and so therefore the production of each event has to figure out how to deal with that demand. So how do we deal with it? What do we do? Do we add more distances? Do we add more people? Do we just allow it to grow to a monumental size? Do we whittle it down and make it smaller and more intimate like we wanted it eventually? So we've grown from, in the last 5 years, so this will be our 6th event coming up this year, we've grown from 121 riders the first year with no cap on registration. And this year we sold out in 36 hours, almost 1,500 spots.
Wow.
So with all that growth, it demands a lot more work and a lot more planning on our end and structure. And we've got to be really confident that we can handle that many people and that we can give each person a really unique experience when they come, because that's what I care about the most, is that relationships are built, experiences are had that are going to last a lifetime, and that each and every person comes and feels like they got what they paid for, and then hopefully much, much more. And They've got to push themselves. So, I hope I answered that question properly. But I have a lot to say about it because it's changed so much, even just for us in the last 5 years. But I'm so excited that people have really embraced it. I think people from pros to beginners all across the landscape of cycling are embracing gravel. And so that's causing a big change.
Yeah. You were talking about, I'm really intrigued about the multi-day event format, particularly like the bike packing ones. We recently got a chance to do the Ramble Ride, and that was just so cool, because it had elements of that satisfaction of like self-sufficiency because you're carrying your stuff. But there's a beer garden at the end of each day.
That's so cool.
So it was like this perfect mix of some support, so there's a bit of a safety net if you're completely new. But I mean, the courses were hard. I mean, they call it a ramble, but it was not a ramble. It beat you up, yeah. So I'm kind of fascinated about how that's going to evolve, because in our other work around like bicycle tourism, we've presented at the conference a lot, and what we hear from like just pure road style events is registrations coming down. There's not as much interest, but a lot of events, pure road events, haven't quite adapted to gravel rides, either for it's not something that they do, or kind of like permitting is a little bit different because it goes through national forests or different types of like land ownership. So there's some interesting challenges to be overcome.
Absolutely. We luckily don't have to deal with any sort of permitting like that, except for in towns. We always work with a halfway town. So we've changed it every 2 years. We've changed our course every 2 years, but always repeated it after the first year, the same course. So 2 years ago, we were with Perry, Oklahoma, and they welcomed us with open arms. I mean, very minimal paperwork, very minimal asks for us on paying for anything, really. They paid for porta potties for us. They had a band at the halfway point. They let us use electrical and water for free, which was so cool. And unfortunately, because the weather's been so bad 4 out of the 5 years at our event, a lot of people really don't hang out at the halfway point, and even so at our finish line down in downtown Stillwater where we're at. And so, yeah, we're hoping for good weather, but the halfway point towns have been so welcoming, and I just wanted to make sure that I talked about that because that's something that I feel not a lot of events do. A lot of events will have a course, but it'll just kind of be in a certain area and not really impact another local community. And it's something that we love downtowns, and we love old architecture, and we love the event as itself telling a story. And so, the course itself goes through some very beautiful old roads that have been around for so long. And then we've been able to partner with some private landowners the last 3 years. This will be the 4th year that we've been working with private landowners and had to gain access and build a relationship, and from nothing. They have no idea about this type of cycling or cycling in general. And so we've gone through the Buckhorn Cattle Company. This will be the 2nd year we've gone through, and no one had ever ridden a bike through their private tunnel that goes underneath I-35 and then into their Longhorn cattle ranch and around and then out on the other side. And so the fact that, people have been receptive to us, not just the halfway point towns, but even just local landowners like the Buckhorn Cattle Company, has been so much fun. So I really encourage, if you're thinking about doing an event or you already have one, I really encourage you to think outside the box and go for those things that take way more time than you think they should, because they're worth way more than you could possibly imagine. It probably took us 2.5 weeks to nail down a meeting with the people that own the Buckhorn Cattle Company, and then multiple visits to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and working with their ranch hands and all sorts of different things. So if there is like a national forest permit or people that you've got to talk with and work through on that type of thing, just do it. It will make your event just exponentially more memorable for each person that comes to do it. So yeah, it's worth it. It's cool.
Yeah. Do you think, by working with smaller local communities or kind of unlikely private landowners, do you think it helps change the hearts and minds of some people that don't ride about cycling?
I think so, definitely. Of course, on the dirt roads, and one of the main reasons I ride dirt roads is because traffic is so much less, right? We can barely ride on paved roads around here because we're a college town, and there's an influx of however many thousand new students every year. And so, we're never going to I'm not going to say never, but if we were to change that mentality of new people moving to town, that would take a decade probably or more. And it may never happen because these people are coming from all over the place. And for them to say, oh, Stillwater is a cycling destination community, we're going to respect that or also participate that we may never get there. But there's only a select few people that live on these dirt roads in every county, surrounding Stillwater and Payne County. So we've already seen multiple people come in the shop in the district and say, hey, we see you, we know that your route came by these last 2 years, and we set up and we cheered people on and we watched the riders, and it was the coolest thing we've been a part of in X amount of years, So yeah, we truly think that we've made an impact locally. And I know Dirty Kansas is the same way. So many people are lining the gravel roads now up there, because it's such a huge national event that would have never, ever known about cycling if it hadn't been for that event. So, yeah, I think that's it's fun because we're entering into a culture that's very, very, very different than cycling.
That's one thing I've been always fascinated about kind of gravel riding and bike packing. It's kind of a sideways form of bike advocacy in a way, because it helps build empathy, and it's advocacy in a way that traditional bike advocacy can't reach, because there's not the density for protected bike lanes, or that stuff isn't necessary. But how do you still bridge that kind of urban rural divide and talk bikes on some kind of level,
Right. And I think just the presence of us being there tells the story that it needs to tell, because it's a slower pace, right? It's a slower pace on the dirt roads of life all in general. And so when they see us, they really see us as a human. They see us as a person on a bike and not as someone who's in the way, because we're really not in the way. They can pass, they can stop, they can say hi. And they do a lot of times. I mean, it's amazing. People stop and they just say, well, what are you doing out here? If they don't, and then if they do know, they'll strike up a conversation about whatever cousin in whatever state is a cyclist. And
right.
it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Another thing about the bikepacking thing that I started this year, actually came to Oregon again with 10 different people, a couple of our mechanics at the shop. My father-in-law came, a few customers, and then a few people from the industry, from Chris King and from I had another person from Co-Motion Cycles come. And I put out there on my Unlearnpavement site, I'm going to pick a route. And the route I picked was the Steens Mountain Loop. So 4 days of riding, about 78 to 80 miles a day around Steens Mountain in southeast Oregon. And we climbed to the top on the last day and then back into French Glen, Oregon. And the idea was to do it fully self-supported, all bikepacking, camping at campsites, hot springs, you name it. But it was in no way no registration, no fees at all. I was basically just kind of the guide and putting it all together. I had a lot of help with all the logistics from my friend David Markman that lives up in. He's Bikepacking David on Instagram. He's a Tour Divide finisher as well, and so anyway, he helped me with a bunch of planning and logistics of that. And then we all met. A bunch of us met in Stillwater. We drove out. Some others came from Portland and from Eugene, and it was so cool. It was so cool to be able to say, hey, we're going to do this route. It's not an event. We're going to do it together and stick together. We have certain time frames for each day. And if you've never done anything like this before, there are multiple people that have, and we can help each other learn. So we're going to do this again. It was a huge learning process for me. We actually had some major mechanicals the first day in 40 miles. So we got to a restaurant, and we had to borrow the car of the lady that worked the restaurant to go back and get our van and use a support van for the next 3 days. So I was a little bit bummed at first, but then I was like, maybe this was the way it should have been from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Because we are bringing out some ultra beginners, and a few of them still did it fully self-contained, and definitely drank some beers out of the van at the campsite. But besides that, we're pretty much self-contained, and we're going to do this again in the fall in New Mexico. So I'll have it all out and sharing it through our district bicycles and my Unlearnpavement stuff on Instagram. We'll be sharing all that. So we just want to bring as many people as possible that are interested in something like this, mm-hmm. that have either done it a million times or never before. And the whole idea is to go to a place that most of us have never been to. And we want to go to the Santa Fe area and find a really great route there. And then every year just pick somewhere different, do 3 to 4 days. Mm-hmm. It's going to be.
Yeah, and chatting with Whitney, that the idea that the big gap between someone buying all the gear and actually doing it isn't from just the gear purchase. It's actually the knowledge and having people to do it. And there seems like this vacuum that needs to be filled with education and just kind of a group experience of some sort.
I totally agree. We had so much extra gear that we were all passing around and we were all sharing. Yeah, between tents and frame bags and water filters and you name it. We did that. It was a full-on communal thing. It was like, hey, I don't have this, and we just communicated as we could through Facebook and Instagram, and we made it happen. So Anyway, I think that just goes back to our conversation about multi-day events, and a little bit of support here and there, because the thing that I'm learning the most is that even though I think I've thought through all of the event planning and all the things, I have to have at least one, if not two, backup plans.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm working on humbling myself to realize those things. So
you're kind of unique in that you run Landrun, but you also have a bike shop. So you have kind of that IBD perspective. What do you think bike shops can do to kind of help enable people's bike adventures?
So it's kind of weird. I'm not like a super structured person. My wife is. She's amazing. Crystal really runs the bike shop side of things. My full on role there at this point now, honestly, is doing a lot of custom builds and just keeping the vibe alive, because as things grow and get older, people come in, people go out. And so I think that's the number one thing that bike shops struggle with is constantly being the source of the stoke. And it's really hard. It is. Like, I want to be so honest about this, that for the first 3 or 4 years, it wasn't hard. I mean, it comes really natural to me, and it doesn't come natural to a lot of people to really want to be excited about a certain thing or working really hard for something that didn't exist before. But like, that's kind of my vibe. Like, we started the bike shop from scratch. We started the race from scratch. We want to create things that didn't exist before. And I think a lot of bike shops see themselves as a place of service and a place of sales, and they kind of judge themselves based upon how well they're doing those two things. And they're really, really missing out on the people aspect. And I know it's being talked about. Adventure and community, I think, are the two biggest things that are being talked about in marketing today. Like togetherness and connectedness and experience and adventure, and it's incredible, because I truly believe Salsa Cycles with Adventure by Bike started this whole thing. Like, it's unbelievable. It's so cool, and they're really, really like permeating every single market, whether it's vehicles or food or hiking, biking, you name it. Any of the outdoor industries, of course, have really latched on to this idea of adventure. But we cannot grow this without connection and relationship. And so what we do at the shop, I mean, it's as simple as this. It's really hard and really taxing on your social and emotional well-being and your soul, because you're giving so much all the time. But we have a couch at the shop. It's right by the service area. It's not just an added piece. There's no TV. We've got no TVs in the shop. It's a really, really big decision that we've made, and people have asked for them for like 2 years. Like, why don't you have TV in here so we can watch the tour, or we can do this, or we can do that? And I said, because if we had that, number one, like, you would obviously probably watch it, but then like, it would be the first source of your time and your effort instead of people. Mm-hmm. And so right there where we've got the couch and a chair, we've got the bar, and we built a bar for people to sit at to watch us, watch them work on our bikes, or watch us work on their bikes. So it's truly almost as simple as that, but then you have to actually care. You have to actually want to talk to these people and know who they are, what they want to do with their bike, what they're doing at work, what's going on with their family, where they're going for the holidays. It's a lot of non-sales and service related work, mm-hmm. and people don't see it as work, and a lot of people don't see it as something that's beneficial. They're like, well, I sold them their bike and it works perfect, and we've got this one group ride. But honestly, at this day and age, it's not enough. It's not enough to keep people's attention, and it's not enough to keep them feeling like they're a worthy person in your area. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of lucky because we're isolated. Stillwater really isn't connected or a suburb of another place. Oklahoma City is an hour from us. Tulsa is an hour and 15 minutes from us. So we're kind of secluded. We've got all these amazing dirt roads that we can ride together, and there's only us and one other bike shop in town, and so we've been able to really give people a place to seriously call their own. Like, district's a synonym for community, and that's why we picked the name for the bike shop, because mm-hmm. we care about people more than we care about bikes or sales or anything else. But as we're 6 years in, I will say that right now, today, it's harder than ever to stay on that pulse and on that excitement level to keep people riding their bikes. For me or Crystal or someone from the shop to be at every group ride, which we have 3 every week all year. And we do a social every Friday at 5 where everyone brings a beer or brings something to drink and we hang out. So, that it gets tiring. I'm not going to lie. It comes very easy to me, but it's still like, there's just so much that goes in with that. People are people, and right. It's like, it's stressful. I think bike shops need to look at what they're doing to truly penetrate relationship. and not just act like it or say they are, but actually, what are they actually doing?
Right.
To do that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting times because I feel like lots. It sounds like the bike industry is in dire straits, or some companies. Lots of shops are closing, and kind of like the value proposition of a bike shop has changed. You can't just be a salesman or purveyor of goods. There's the internet, there's price, transparency. If someone is shopping purely on price, there's no reason to go to the bike shop. So there's got to be some added value, and
Exactly.
it could be community, kind of the educational component. I saw that on your Instagram, you did kind of a tour of like really interesting bike shops. You went to Peddler's Fork.
Yeah.
Did you make it to Topanga Creek?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really good friends with Chris there, and with Jay Barre, who was working there for quite a while. And so I've been to Topanga twice now, actually, and it's a magical place, dude.
Yeah. When I think of like the bike shops that I really like, that if I'm gonna start dropping some dollars, I think of those shops that have engendered some other kind of social aspect or community aspect first, rather than purely price.
Yeah, and I think something that's also that's contributed to just us being able to kind of weather this climate of, and I hate to talk about it because I feel like the more we talk about it, the more power we give it, right?
Right.
The internet and like the dying of bike shops in general because of whatever X, Y, and Z. But I think our race too has given us some credibility. Landrun's given us some clout that people trust us, that we know what we're talking about because we do put on what we like to think a pretty stellar event, and they're coming here. We've got 36 states this year and 11 people from Canada. It's crazy. But yeah, anyway, so like we've been able to make connections and relationships with people all over the country, and sell bikes to them or talk them through a build with maybe their local shop too, which we love to do. I helped a guy. He saw a blog post on our District Bicycles website about a certain fork on the new Karate Monkey, and he wanted to talk all about it. And I was like, dude, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And I just called the shop, and I'm like, well, you really need to go visit Bailey Newbury at Comrade Cycles in Chicago, and he's going to totally take care of you. I don't know if the guy went or not, but hopefully he did, So it's cool. I love to push people to their local space. I don't want to gobble up everyone's their business, and I don't really truly want to open any sort of online store. I want people to make a relationship with us, trust us, and then we provide them with whatever it is that they're asking for and hoping for. So yeah, man, I don't know. It's a crazy time. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've truly buckled down and stuck with the certain brands that we know that we do well with, and what we know we do well with as a bike shop. And so yeah, I think shops just have to realize that blaming it on this or blaming it on that is not the answer. It's not at all. It's like, well, what are you truly passionate about? And if people aren't one of those things, how can you get yourself to be passionate about people? Because people are they're the ones buying the product. Just like you said, if you're shopping on price, there's no reason to go to the bike shop unless you know a person that either has more information to give you than you already have or can find on the internet, or that will give you an experience unlike any other at an IBD or at a retail store. So, I see that in the outdoor industry. I see it everywhere. You've got to build relationship.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about social media for a bit. Because you tend to use it really well. How has it changed, like how you approach like marketing Landrun or promoting the bike shop and stuff?
Oh man, so I want to do more with. There's only 5 of us that work at the bike shop, and we just hired Sally Asher for event. She's basically the event manager for Landrun now. I have to have help because I can't be at the shop and run the event all at the same time. So I finally hired someone after 6 years, which is crazy, but it's awesome, and I'm so pumped about it. So she's helping with marketing and all sorts of different things. But the social media aspect of it, I would love to be able to do more of the bike packing things that I've done with Unlearnpavement through the bike shop specifically, because obviously that's where you buy the product from. But we just want to tell the stories of what we're doing, what our customers are doing, and then also of what can be done with the product that you may already have. And so I feel like instead of talking about specific product, we're just letting the stories and the pictures tell themselves. And also continually trying to go out and do crazy stuff that people haven't heard of yet. So I went and did the Trans North Georgia, the TNGA race in Georgia in August. It's 360 miles, 355 miles of mountain bike trail, gravel, pavement, you name it, self-supported bikepacking race.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to, obviously use social media as much as I could, but I really couldn't use it that much during the race. But things like that, I want to try and capture really well and show people that, hey, these things are out there and you're capable of doing it. And I think that's what we try and do throughout all the social media, whether it's Landrun, District, or Unlearnpavement, is like, stop telling yourself that you're not capable, because you are. And whatever product you have, whatever bike you've got, whatever gear you have, it's okay. You can use that to do X, Y, and Z, a gravel ride or a camp out. So yeah, we just really try and tell like the story of the person is worthy of doing these things, and you don't have to know all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I think coming at social media as a bike shop with really product heavy specific stuff really scares a lot of people away and turns them off. But if it's people centric, adventure centric, and hey, this is happening, you should do it too, I think that's what's caused us to be really, really successful.
Right. Do you think the bike industry has a problem like communicating with the beginners? Or
100%. Always has, and maybe unfortunately will for the foreseeable future. And that's what we like built ourselves on, is that it's okay that you don't know. Like, there was a time that we didn't know. And, I get people to sign up for Landrun all the time who are not prepared, who are in no way ready to take on 100 miles, especially if they have to hike 7 to 8 miles in the mud carrying their bike. But you know what? In a year or two, they're ready, and they, or even 6 months, they figure it out. If they're passionate enough to want to keep moving, they are. And a lot of bike shops, man, I still hear it every day. I still hear it. I walked into that shop. They didn't give me the time of day because I didn't look the part. They didn't, explain this to me very well. I don't understand what this does or what this does. And a lot of times, we just try and bring it way, way down to the basics. And, it's crazy because we're juggling all these things at once. Like, we're doing a lot of sales with Moots now. And with Moots, it's like, they're one of the most premier brands in the industry, definitely in the United States. And so, like, we're dealing with customers that do know, like, the gram weight detail of each thing that's happening on the bike down to the bar tape. But then we're also working with a brand new student that just got to town to get a townie or whatever. And so, like, we want to be just as excited for the person getting a $350 FX from Trek as we are for a person that may be spending, $12,000 to $14,000 on a Moots, which is pretty easy to do these days, actually. So yeah, man, like I said, it's hard. Yeah. It's hard. But is it worth it? Yes, totally. Because you get to see the new bike day photos that we put up for people. There's no like tier of who gets a new bike day photo at District on Instagram. It's anybody that lets us take their photo. And most people are like pumped about it. We had a guy drive up with his wife from Dallas.
Oh, wow.
To get a cutthroat from us, and he didn't say anything while he's getting a bike. We're getting him fit, and then all of a sudden he's like, all right, I'm ready for my new bike day photo. We brought props. Like, you brought your own props? He's like, yeah. So he had like birthday hats. It was his birthday. Oh, dude, it was so cool. So, I mean,
yeah, it's really small things like that that kind of engender me to bike shops. Like Topanga does that too. Like
Yes.
So it's so simple.
That's really where we got it from, like we got it from them from a long time ago whenever they first hit it hard with salsa. And I mean, I can't even count how many salsa vallas or El Mariachis they had on the back porch by that tree with the sign. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it's about. They understand. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's so simple, but it's also like so memorable. And I think it for me as a consumer, like it's more impactful than like when I see an ad in the local paper, you know. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, man. Like I said, people centric, like all the way, whether it's from an event standpoint or a retail standpoint, or just like, trying to talk about whatever it is, event that I'm going to do next or have done in the past, or that I'm, like visiting a bike shop or whatever. I want to tell the story to people. Like I'm not, bikes always win on Instagram, right? Like in our world, like bikes always get the most likes. I love that hashtag, the no bikes, no likes. It's so true. But sometimes I get really surprised, and people remember the stories. They remember the people, and it changes them. It really does. So social media, truly at the core of it, it needs to be that. It needs to be social. Otherwise, it will eventually, lose its luster if we don't focus on people. And I think that's what's happening in the brick and mortar retail as well. Same thing. Like I remember, there was a shoe store in my hometown in Parsons, Kansas, where we're from, and it was James Shoes. It's like I wanted to go there to see that person, to fit my shoes, and now it's like that's just not a thing anymore. And it makes me wonder if that even exists. But it is an impactful thing. It lasted a lifetime. You knew who you were going to see when you went to that place. You knew that they cared about your story. Same thing with my barber when I was a kid. They're still there. The guys are in their 70s now, and like I want to talk to them. I want to go see my old eye doctor because like he provided not just a service but a relationship.
Right.
Can't drive that home enough. I just can't.
Yeah, that was actually one of the kind of the reasons we started this video series a while back when we were in Portland called a shop visit, where we go to bike shops and interview the owner. Because I think that's what people want to, that's who people want to meet and talk to, because shops, it seems like a lot of them tend to be a reflection of the owner's own interests. So to get to talk to that person and hear them, talk about why they started the shop, why they like it, why a person should come, and really show people that yes, there's a brick and mortar, but there's humans working inside.
Right. Yes. They're living, breathing individuals. It's totally true. That goes back to the social media thing for me too, man. Like you guys and the bike fishing and just you being out there doing it and not necessarily making it look really, really difficult, I think has inspired a lot of people. Me in particular, I've got a fly rod now. I haven't used it yet. I can 100% contribute that to you, and the fact that you guys are out there and you're doing it and you're making it look incredibly fun and you're making it look like super doable. So, man, thank you for that. Number one, and number two, I think that's a really good way for people to approach telling their story and then also getting other people excited about it. Just it's cool. Yeah,
we should come out to Montana. I'm starting to get a sense of some fly shop / bike shop partnerships. And we're hoping to do some kind of bike fishing event officially in Missoula. Maybe get the kids from Swift Industries over here and do something. So it should be
rad. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, I think this is a good place to end. Thanks again, Bobby, for joining us today. And if you guys like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you have suggestions for future guests, leave those in the comments below. If you have questions for Bobby, leave those in the comments below. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Bobby.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Russ. Great talking with you.